Greetings, my name is Joel Fisher. I'm the engineering manager here at Air Relief. Today we want to talk about a subject called energy. And energy is an important topic these days because as more and more coal plants are being shut down, the cost of energy is going to do nothing but go up. And let's talk about one of the most expensive components in your facility to operate, and that's a centrifugal air compressor, or basically any air compressor at all. If you think about it, a 1,000 horsepower centrifugal running 24 hours a day for pretty much 320 to 340 days a year is going to run you somewhere around $300,000 in energy cost. And basically that's just calculated on 5 cents per kilowatt hour. In some areas of the country, in the Northeast in particular, the energy costs a lot higher up there, so that number is only going to grow. So what we want to do is we want to be a little bit smarter about how we operate our machines and how we use that energy that we're burning up. Today, we're going to talk about throttle limit, and we're going to talk about how our inlet guide vane or our inlet valve affects that operation and also affects that energy cost and that consumption that you get into. The opening of the inlet valve is directly related to the energy consumption on your compressor. And the more that valve opens, the more flow goes into your machine, the more that you're spending on electricity. Now, a centrifugal compressor has a couple of valves that we have to be concerned with. One is the bypass valve, and one is our inlet, or our inlet guide vane as we have here. As the inlet guide vane opens, of course, as I mentioned earlier, it affects the total power consumption and also the electricity cost. When you have a machine like a centrifugal operating at an air system, especially at a fixed or a constant pressure, it's very important to note that the opening of the valve has to be maintained at a minimum level or a minimum point to keep the machine operating in a stable region. If we get into a region called surge, where we are restricting the flow going into the machine for a fixed output pressure, then we get into a situation where basically the machine can be damaged and you're not putting any air into the system. So what we want to do is we want to operate out of the surge region or over in a safe region. Also, one of the other things that affects the operation of a machine is the intake temperature and also the discharge pressure. Now, we want to be careful about these parameters because they vary as the temperature goes up and down throughout the day and throughout the year. So what a lot of people do is when they go and set the throttle limit or the minimum throttle point, they'll go in and they'll actually set a value much higher than they need to because they're worried about situations where the air's density is changing, the temperature is changing, or the discharge pressure is changing. So this is a very efficient way to operate the machine as far as keeping a machine operating online, but it's also a very inefficient way to operate a compressor as far as energy consumption is concerned. Now let me demonstrate something to you. As you open your intake valve, we can assume that this is our minimum opening of our compressor, okay? And that's going to operate around the clock all of the time throughout the year, regardless of what season's going on. Well, there may be situations where you can actually reduce this position, small amount, and you can restrict the flow going into the machine and still operate in a stable fashion. That's what we call the min throttle point or the min amp point. This point, like I say, a lot of times is misset. And what we'd like to do is get back to setting that to a closer range or a closer point where we need to. We recommend here at Air Relief to go about at least 4 times a year for a lot of systems and check that setting, especially if it's in a system that does not have a dynamic set point or a dynamic change that can take place with the throttle intake valve based on inlet air temperature and the discharge pressure. So like I say, we would like for this thing to be looked at least 4 times a year. That's what we would recommend. There are automatic systems like our own TurboLogix that controls this valve automatically and makes these changes for you. So we'd like for you guys, if you have anything that you'd like to talk about any further, to give us a call here at Air Relief sometime, and we'll describe a little bit more fully about how you can check this and how you can go about setting your throttle limit. Or actually, we'd like for you to give one of our service technicians a call here and actually have them come on site and demonstrate for your people or your personnel how to go about doing that. Thank you very much.